You're welcome. Labas rytas. So good to be with you today. It is my great joy to spend some time with you this morning, and because I know you already have received quite a bit of content in Universal Design for Learning, I will be expanding on some things. I will be sharing some stories today, and I really hope to be an encouragement to you as you step into this important historic time in Lithuania. So it's my joy to be here, and Matis will be helping me in just a moment. First, I would like to just simply share with you where I come from, and I am from the state of Minnesota, which is right next to Canada, in the middle of the United States of America. We have an amazing education system in our state, and I'm incredibly honored to have been working in the field of disabilities for 28 years. And when I started in education, inclusion was just beginning in America, and I had the beautiful pleasure of learning in an inclusive environment at the university. And I learned from special education professors and general education professors at the same time. So from the very beginning, I was observing and interacting in an inclusive environment. I stepped into the schools and taught for 6 years and was a leader in the schools for 4 years. Another 6 years, I'm sorry. And then I came to Bethel University, where I've been leading special education teacher preparation programs for 17 years. And we offer multiple different licenses to work with different types of disabilities to prepare them to work in our schools. Most recently, last summer, I was hired as the Associate Dean of Education, which provides me a broader opportunity to meet the needs of all of our future educators at my university, as well as all of the principals and superintendents and directors of special education. So it's a beautiful opportunity to continue to ensure inclusion is happening at the university level so that when they step into the schools, it continues to happen. So today, you will meet some of my friends. You will learn the differences and similarities of Universal Design for Learning and differentiation. And I understand you're going to go a little deeper later today with some of my other colleagues. I'm going to talk about something maybe you haven't heard a lot about. And in America, or at least in the state of Minnesota, we talk about pushing in students into the general ed classroom and pulling out of the general education classroom because full inclusion doesn't work for all children. And so I'm going to talk a little bit about what that looks like and what that experience is like for the students who are in those schools. We use the term least restrictive environment. I'm going to talk a little bit about that and how it relates to inclusion. I will also share some stories of students and then some ways that you will be able to make a difference in your classroom, in your school, in your municipality. So, I am now inviting my friend Matis to help me translate for a few minutes. Come closer. So, who do you see?
Can
you translate that? Who do you see? Did he say it? Okay. So this is my friend Lisa. Lisa and I love to hang out. And we love to go bowling. And she has a way better bowling ball than I do. And we like to go out for great coffee. And we like to go biking. And Lisa bikes much faster than I do. And this is my friend Dima from Ukraine.
Ir čia yra mano draugas Dima iš Ukrainos.
And Dima is really great with drawing.
Ir Dima labai gerai piešia.
And you can see some of his drawings about beautiful buildings in Ukraine.
Ir matote gražią piešinį Ukrainoje.
And he built this beautiful art on the side of this building.
Ir
He posted these on the side of the building.
jisai įkėlė savo nuotraukas, piešinius.
And these are my friends Daniel and Kirsta.
Ar tie ar mano draugai Danielius ir Kirsta.
And they are boyfriend and girlfriend, and they love to dance.
Ar jie yra vaikinai ir merginai, ar jie labai mėgsta pašokti.
And this is a group of friends of mine that went to a special dinner.
Ar tie yra grupės, kur jie nueina į vakarienę.
And a great dance.
Ir labai gerai šoka.
And this is my friend Lisa.
Ir jie ir čia yra mano draugė Liza.
And this is Emily.
Ir čia yra Emily.
And Emily loves to find great dresses and fashion
Ir
and diamonds.
Ir Emilis patinka daimantai.
And these are my friends from my university.
Ar tie yra mano draugai iš universiteto.
And they helped collect money for children in Ukraine.
Ir jie patikrinta pinigus už Ukrainą.
So these friends are, so I'll ask the translator to start again. Just hold on, Matis. These friends are not extraordinary. They are people like you and me. They want to be a part of a community like you and me. They want to grow and learn like you and me. They want to use their gifts and their talents like you and me. So now my friend Matis, I'm going to ask him some questions, and I'll ask the translator to translate for all of you. He will speak in English. So Matis, what are your favorite hobbies?
My favorite hobbies are doing gymnastics, and I really love go for a bike ride and go to swimming lessons.
And you are a really great gymnast. Did you recently win an award?
Yeah.
What kind of award?
Medals.
You got several medals, yes.
Yeah,
and go ahead.
And diploma.
And diploma. And what is your favorite part of gymnastics?
My favorite part of gymnastics is doing front flips and back flips.
I know, flips and backflips. What do you like about school?
I like about school physical education and music and French and anything else.
And girls, yeah. Yes. What about school isn't so great?
The thing I don't like about my school of bullying and harassment.
Yeah, bullying and harassment can make school difficult. Yeah, yep. And you have so many wonderful things. What are you going to do this summer?
I'm gonna do on this summer. I'm gonna find a wife and find children.
Very good. And the final question, Matas, how many languages do you speak?
I speak Arabic, French, German, Korean, Chinese, Russian, and I
And
think and
Lithuanian and
Lithuanian.
English.
Yeah, and English.
And Matas? I speak one language. so Achu, Matas, thank you so much. You can. So Matas and all of my friends have had people that included them in general life, in the community, in school, at home, in all over. They have been included. So you are working in education in Lithuania at a historic time. You are blessed, and you can make a difference. So yes, your law is officially changing on September 1st, but it is more than a law. It is about a basic human condition to be included. So what I'd like you to do is take your phone out and log into slido.com, and I would like you to respond to this question. When you hear the term inclusion, are you excited? Are you fearful? Are you frustrated? Are you concerned? Or maybe you're not sure how you feel. And then I will ask the technicians to put the results on the screen. And I'll just wait a few more moments. I'll wait till it gets to 40, maybe a little more. Okay, so this is really, really encouraging to me, and to hear you say you are excited just goes right to my heart. So thank you for being here today and being willing to try something that not everyone is excited about. And we're concerned. Yes, we don't have all the answers yet. This is new for most schools. Some schools have been doing this for several years. But it is really exciting to know that you can make a difference in the acceptance and inclusion of all individuals in Lithuania. I'll just say what I think, a little bit of what I've observed for the past few weeks since I've been here, is that there is a reason to be concerned because we don't have all the answers yet. We don't know exactly how we are going to meet the needs of all of our students in our schools. And I'm going to talk a little bit about that today. But I will say you have amazing regional centers that are here to support you and provide consultation to you. And general education teachers, you are experts in your field. And so we take those experts and we take the special education experts and we collaborate together to figure out how to meet the needs of our students. Frustrated, yes, it might be something that is so very different than what we've ever had, and maybe you feel like you don't have all the answers on what it's going to look like or what it has looked like when you've had students with disabilities in your classroom. So today you're going to get more content beyond me that will continue to support you in those efforts. So thank you, technician. You can go back to the slideshow. So I believe you are here today and you've been invited for sure because you want to make a difference. And personally, I am just thrilled to be in this country at this time, and I'm incredibly honored I forgot to say it earlier, I'll say it now. Special thank you to the Ministry of Education, to the National Center for Inclusion, and to the Fulbright organization in America that has made this possible for me to be here. So special thanks to all of them. So UDL, Universal Design for Learning and Differentiation. So we have a spectrum of needs in our classrooms, and that's what makes education so amazing, because we have all these students in our rooms. We have students who are gifted, students who are struggling academically, students with an identified disability, students with average ability, students who are hyperactive or daydream, they're distracted, students with emotional and behavioral needs, and students with organizational needs. How do we meet all of those needs? So we do it through a variety of different ways. The one that you've already heard about quite a bit in previous conferences with the Millennium Schools Project is the Universal Design for Learning. We will talk a little bit about that, a little bit about differentiation, creativity, flexibility, collaboration, and understanding. So a little bit just as a review of universal design in education, this is where you are designing your curriculum from the beginning for the maximum diversity of learners, including students with disabilities. I understand that classroom teachers are given a textbook that the country has approved, or whatever the curriculum is that has been approved. It does not mean we have to change all of the curriculum. It means we are thinking about how we deliver the curriculum. So when we think about universal design, it means every learner is being considered when we teach in our classrooms. The design is intentional, purposeful, planned. We have to spend a little bit of time with that when we're planning our lessons. How do we ensure that we are meeting the needs of all the learners in our classroom? It also means we have to know the learners in our classroom. Learning is all individuals being challenged and supported in meaningful ways to grow towards expertise, to progress in school. And that is what we want to happen for all learners. They're not all going to make the same progress. We want them to make progress. We do not want you to change your standards. The standards need the same. So how do we provide access to meet all of those standards? And then differentiation, you will start to see how they're similar, but differentiated teaching occurs when a teacher plans a lesson that adjusts either the content being discussed and taught, the process that we use to learn the content, and the product that we expect from students to ensure that learners at different starting points can receive the instruction they need to grow and succeed. So you're going to see how the two are going to come together, and how that support from a special pedagogue, a social pedagogue, a psychologist, speech language pathologist, how those people are going to help you meet the needs of all the students. So I'm going to first spend some time on the left side of the screen. So Universal Design for Learning is a plan for we plan for diverse learning needs from the very beginning. So you think about September, you're going to have some summer months to breathe and get rejuvenated, and September is coming, and you have an opportunity to plan differently. It's more focused on student-centered learning, and the learning experiences are proactively designed. The goal is to remove any barriers to learning, and then to provide those multiple means of engagement, representation, and action and expression. And those are all the things that you have learned. I don't know, I can't get that to work. All the things you have been learning in the different sessions you have had on Universal Design for Learning. Multiple ways to engage, for you to represent your content, and for students to express what it is they're learning. Differentiation, on the other hand, is a responsive practice. So we are responding to what the plan was made for Universal Design for Learning. So we make those adjustments based on individual needs. And that's where we have to really understand what is it that our students need. So when you receive a consultation summary from a regional center or from the autism center, they are going to provide details on what that student or those students need to make it in your classroom, to progress in your classroom. We do this after the data is collected and we notice some trends. So currently the system is that some students may even go to the regional center or the autism center, for example, and learn some techniques from a specialist and then apply those techniques when they come back to your school. So again, that collaborative piece is so important, that we're getting input from the experts on disabilities, and we're using our expertise on content, and we bring the two together. The goal of differentiation is to provide a responsive and optimal learning environment for individuals or groups of learners. It provides targeted strategies that are teacher-directed as teachers choose which strategies students receive. So over time, you will begin to recognize the strategies that are provided for you from the regional centers to start to implement them without anyone even telling you. So yes, there are certain students that will need those strategies, but others will also benefit, and it doesn't hurt to use some of those strategies with other people. So in America, we use this term least restrictive environment. So in the mid-90s, when inclusion became a part of our practices, inclusion is not required by law, but we must always start with the general education classroom. So we have this term least restrictive environment, which is telling us, I forgot this one slide had. So on inclusion, the focus is access, integration into all aspects of general education as appropriate. Least restrictive environment, the focus is a specific setting or placement in which the student can be successful, independent, and able to make transition. We always can provide instruction in the least restrictive environment, but it does not always mean the regular classroom. So I'm going to break this down a little bit more. So we have a student with a disability, and we evaluate them, and we learn that the student has autism. And we have the student start in that general education classroom, and the evaluation from the Pedagogical Psychological Center is going to give some recommendations. Those recommendations should be enough to get started on how do we serve this student in the classroom. We won't know right away if that classroom is the best place for them or if they need to be pulled out some, if they need some additional therapies from occupational therapy, physical therapy. So that's why it's never just one decision and that's it. We are always collecting data and observing how is the student doing. If they are making progress with some supports in the classroom, then we celebrate that and we keep using those supports. We don't stop. That's what that student needs in order to continue to move forward. It may be that it's not enough support, that that general education teacher has 30 students in their room, and that student may need some additional time to understand social skills or to learn language techniques. Those might happen outside of the classroom. This isn't all figured out yet. And so we need to, that's why I'm here collaborating with my amazing colleagues. They are so eager to be working with the schools and to figure out ways to support students with disabilities. And so it's a process. It's not going to be done on September 1st. It's going to take time. It took us in America a long time, and we're still not perfect for sure. The one thing we learned is that full inclusion was not the answer. And so we really had to operate with this least restrictive environment. Where can the student be successful, as independent as possible, and be able to make transition into the next grades? I want to encourage you to save your questions, and at the end we'll have plenty of time for you to ask questions. I am willing to listen and answer as many questions as I can today. So this idea of push in and pull out, this is related to least restrictive environment. So when we think about that setting where they can be successful and as independent as possible, we always want to consider when we're pushing in, that's the general education classroom, we always consider that first. When a student can understand the content, but they may need some adaptations. We call those modifications, accommodations, and somebody may be helping with some differentiation. It's always considered, and especially when a student can benefit from social opportunities. So maybe we have a student with more severe disabilities that really need an opportunity to engage with peers of their same age. And that gives them social opportunity. Maybe it's during specific class times during the day, but maybe not every day, every hour. When a student can be independent, we absolutely want them to be in that regular classroom, and when a student can progress in learning. When we start to think about pulling out, again, this is not 100% of the time, but we only do this when needed so that the child or pupil can be successful, independent, and able to make transition. So what kind of supports do they need when we pull them out? For example, if they have behaviors that are interrupting their learning, if they have sensory needs that impact their learning, and when there is low intellectual ability, that their ability to learn is many years lower than everyone else in the classroom. We want to figure out ways to make sure that they are independent as possible, making progress, and able to make transition. So if we have a student who has lower intellect and they are in a general education classroom, there are many things they can do. They can read, they can write, they can do mathematics, but they may need some adaptations to do all of those things. And it may be that they are not doing those things at grade level. And so the evaluation component of inclusion is a whole nother layer that we will be talking about that I am working on with the National Inclusion Center and the Ministry of Education, and I think the National Education Agency. And I will be back again in the fall, and those are some of the things we will start working through, because evaluation of what I'm doing in school is really important. So what does that look like for the student who has an individual plan of some sort? And if the items I've mentioned, behavior, sensory, low intellect, can be met with supports in the classroom, then we still want to do that. But of course, we're also balancing, do we have staff? Do we have teaching assistants who can support? Do we have special pedagogues, social pedagogues, et cetera, to meet the needs of our students? And all of those answers, we don't have all of those answers yet. But I can tell you there are really amazing people working on getting those answers. So now I'd like to share some stories of what UDL looks like and differentiation looks like in Minnesota schools, so that you can hear the students that are benefiting from these services. So first we have Isaac. He is a 9th grader, and the particular class I'm thinking about today is physics. So Isaac's teacher, the first day when I started in this particular high school, the physics teacher came to me and said, "Welcome to our school. You're never going to work with me because I teach physics and kids with disabilities aren't in my classroom." And I said, "Oh, well, yesterday I just welcomed a family and their son has 150 IQ and he will be in your classroom. So let's talk and let's collaborate." But for him, it was new. He had never had anyone with a disability in his classroom. And so we worked together, and he soon learned how smart this young man was and how successful he could be in his classroom. So Isaac had high-functioning autism. He had above-average intelligence, superior intelligence, challenges with social skills. He had sensory overload and executive functioning challenges. So each of these students I'm going to talk about, you are going to see that the left side of the screen is exactly the same, because universal design for learning works for any and all students. Some students need some additional support. So Isaac, he was partnered with the peers that he trusted. So during lab time, for example, he was partnered with somebody that he trusted. He had noise-canceling headphones because noise was really difficult for him, and it caused him a lot of stress. He had visuals for the rules that needed to be followed in the lab. There are a lot of safety concerns in a lab. And he had the ability to leave class 5 minutes early because the crowded corridors were stressful for him. Could he learn alongside his neurotypical peers? Yes, absolutely. And at the bottom of each of these slides, I have a continuum of where this student fell as we think about pushing into the general education classroom and pulling out of the general education classroom. So he was mostly in his general education classrooms. Once a week he had a social skills classroom, and every day he checked in with his special education teacher. Then we have Monica. Monica's an 11th grader, and the class that I'm specifically talking about right now is social studies or history. Monica had significant anxiety. She had difficulty just walking into the classroom. She had extreme absenteeism, and she had average intelligence. So the story that's a little bit different with Monica is that we didn't even have to evaluate her. During the referral process for the evaluation, we talked with the teacher and said, what if you welcome her every day with a verbal greeting? Just let's try that for 2 weeks. So every day, the first day she showed up after that, but she was gone quite a bit. The first day she showed up, the teacher greeted her. Good morning, Monica. I'm glad you're here. That is all he did. And she showed up every single day. And this was 20 years ago, and it still brings me to tears to know that that was all she needed. She needed somebody to see her. She needed somebody to know that she was there that day. And she didn't need special education services. She just needed somebody to see her. Then we have Thomas, 5th grader, with learning disabilities. So he had a learning disability in math, written language, and reading, and so he struggled in all of his academics. He was frustrated with learning, and that would turn into behaviors. So he couldn't do it, and he would exhibit behaviors. And so he would end up leaving class because of behaviors instead of leaving class for support. So we changed his programming, and he had average intelligence, as students with learning disabilities do. There's just a discrepancy in how they are processing information in order to learn the content. So for Thomas, we provided him a yellow plastic overlay. And I know the Inclusion Center, they already have all these amazing tools that they are suggesting and recommending to regional centers and to schools. But Thomas took that yellow overlay to every class, and he needed it to help his eyes be able to see black ink on white paper, because for him, the words were all mixed up when he didn't have that. It's quite a fascinating thing if you choose to look into it. It's very, very interesting how the rods in our eyes see black on white. He was allowed to write on colored paper and not white paper. He was also allowed to use the computer for typing instead of writing with a pencil. And he used graph paper for writing his numbers because he couldn't keep them in a straight line. So could he learn alongside his peers? Yes, absolutely. But he did need some pull-out support for reading, written language, and math. For math, he didn't need any new concepts. He just needed reinforcement of what the classroom teacher had taught. For reading and writing, he needed some intentional teaching from the special education teacher. So he had mostly push in and a little bit of pull out for the areas that he was most challenged in. Yulia, she's a 7th grader, and she has ADHD. And in Minnesota, we have a disability category called Other Health Disability, and that means that in order to qualify for services, you have to have a medical diagnosis of some kind. She had significant distractibility, she was very hyperactive, and she had average intelligence. So for Julia, she was allowed to take a speed walk break every 30 minutes during direct instruction time. So if there was intense teaching happening in her classrooms, she could take a 30-minute break. She had a pass, and she would do her speed walking down the hallways, and she would come back to class, and she was ready to learn. She was also allowed to stand in the back of the classroom if she just needed to wiggle a little bit more so that she wasn't a direct distraction for the other students. She had fidgets that were quiet so that they did not distract other people, just so that she could keep her hands busy while she was listening in class. Could Julia, I'm in Lithuania, I'm saying Yulia. Could Yulia learn alongside her peers? Yes, absolutely. She had a little bit of pull-out in order to help with her organizational skills. So Yulia's locker was just a pile of papers. Her backpack was just, crumpled up papers, and she needed some help with organization. So a teaching assistant or the special education teacher would help her once a day with her organization. And Amelia is a 6th grader, and she has an intellectual disability. And she has Down syndrome, and she has low intellect with some distractibility. She has some functional needs and some communication needs. So for Amelia, she would be in general education classrooms. So let's say we're studying the life cycle of a plant. And the classroom is learning about the plant cycle, and she is going to have a book that has fewer words in it, the same pictures, fewer words, with vocabulary that she can understand. And we would work closely with the librarian on finding books of that type. And I will tell you, librarians, do you call them librarians here? Sometimes they're called media specialists for us. But they love to help find books. And I remember when I was a teacher, I was not very good at finding these great books to support my students. So I got in the habit of going to the librarian and saying, I need a book on this and this and this and this, but at a lower level, and they would find them for me, and I would provide it for my student and my teaching assistant. And so Amelia could still learn about the water cycle. She just wasn't learning about it with the exact same words that everyone else was learning. Does that take time? Yes. But then it was ready for my next student who needed it the next time. So Amelia had about half and half, push in about half of the day and pull out for half of the day, because she was needing some content on functional skills, more intense reading support, some social skills support, and she also received speech language services. So those are the stories I wanted to share with you, a spectrum of disabilities. So we had autism, we had Down syndrome, we had learning disability, we had ADHD, to give you a sense of these are the students that can succeed in an inclusive classroom, and some need a little bit of extra support. They all need some support. Some need a little bit of extra when we pull out. So let's talk about other things you can bring into your classroom besides universal design for learning and differentiation. I want to talk a little bit about creativity, flexibility, collaboration, and understanding. So with creativity, I want to challenge you to use the techniques of UDL and try one new thing each week in September, just one. And maybe that one thing is repeated every day, but maybe it's how you deliver your content. Maybe it's how your students are receiving the content? What do they need to interact with the content? Maybe it's how they demonstrate to you they know the content. You don't need to buy anything special to do that. You just have to think creatively on how you're going to do that. In October, maybe it's every day you're trying something new. Ask a colleague. Maybe a colleague down the hall has already done this and is doing a great job and you want some extra ideas. Maybe there are social media groups, or maybe you should start a social media group where you can go and talk to others who have creative ideas in universal design. I know Europe as a whole has been doing this for a while, and there are brilliant ideas happening all over Europe. Share your ideas with your colleagues as things work. If something worked for you, let everyone else know that it worked and why. Flexibility. If something isn't working, try something else. It's okay to fail. Most of us probably didn't ride our bike the first time we stepped on it. We probably fell, or we had some training wheels to support us. So try. Don't give up if it doesn't work the first time. Give yourself grace. Give your students grace, and allow freedom to learn in your classroom. This requires flexibility. And some of us have, I'm not getting into growth mindset today, but if we have a set mindset and we are not able to move around from our own thinking and the curriculum we've been teaching for 20 years, that isn't helping our students. So we need to get into that growth mindset of how can I challenge myself to grow so that all of my students can grow. Collaboration. I cannot stress this one enough. We must be able to collaborate with one another. And sometimes, maybe if I've been a teacher of math or science or a 6th grade teacher, I love my classroom, I love what I teach, and I never have to talk with anyone. Well, now you're being pushed and challenged to work with others in order to meet the needs of all of your students. I had the opportunity to be at a school last week in the village of Vidukle. I hope I'm saying that correctly. And I saw many amazing things when I was there, but the piece that I heard the most was about collaboration. And because the physics teacher collaborates with the special pedagogue. And they work together, and without that, they're not meeting the needs of their students, or it's frustrating to do it alone. So that ability to collaborate is so critically important. And when I was the department lead at this very large high school in Minnesota, 3,000 students, 300 students had disabilities. I had 25 special education teachers, 35 teaching assistants, and we collaborated with the general education teachers. And I had a principal who allowed me to work with the social studies teacher and my teaching assistant that was in her classroom, and the math teacher and my special education teacher that were together in the same room. My principal gave me 2 full days to work with all of the teachers. Each teacher got about a half day where we had substitute teachers come in. They covered the classrooms so that we could officially start our collaboration together, and time was given to us to do that. So we need time, and we don't always have time in our classrooms. So we have to carve out that time so that we can collaborate and use our expertise about disabilities and our expertise about our content to come together to know how to best serve our students. Finding a common meeting time is difficult, but it's also critically important in order for this to be successful. It doesn't mean it has to happen every day, but once a week where we can touch base and say, what do you need? Do you have a test this week? Can I help you modify it? What are you studying next week? Can I go and work with the librarian to find some books for you? We're working together to meet those needs. We want to communicate about the great things that are happening and our challenges, what worked well, what isn't working so well. The UDL process includes a time of reflection and assessment. and then revisiting things, reflecting, assessing what do we need to change. We also want to collaborate with parents and guardians. They are the ones that know their child the best. So we have to listen to them and hear about their child, which goes into understanding. Get to know your students. It's okay to ask them questions. Last night, Matis and I met each other. We met each other about a year ago, but we only had a few minutes together at that time. And last night, oh my goodness, I was so sad the night had to end because we talked about so many different things last night. And that's how you get to know your students. You just ask them questions. What do they like to do? And what challenges them? What don't they like? What brings them joy? So in addition to that, get to know their parents. When I teach university classes, I will often have a parent come in and share their story. And they want you to know that they are exhausted. And sometimes they don't get to sleep because they're dealing with really difficult things. So if they don't respond to you, it's probably because they simply can't. They don't have anything left. So listen to them, seek their input, thank them for what they are doing as a parent. Listen, learn, and try. Just try. And based on the results in the beginning of the question about inclusion, you are a group that are willing to do that, so thank you. And I want to end with this image. It's a common image you can find anywhere on the internet, but I took it from this particular resource. But I think this gives us a clear picture of what equality versus equity is when we think about disabilities. So in the first image, it's assumed, so this is a baseball field, and it's a wooden fence. And it's assumed that everyone will benefit from the same supports. So the fence is there to keep us safe from the baseballs flying into our face. They're being treated equally. In the second image, we have the fence, but we also have some boxes, and the boxes are now staggered for the height of the child. So individuals are given different supports to make it possible for them to have equal access to the game. They are being treated equitably. And in the third picture, it's an chain link fence, thank you. It's a chain link fence, and all of them can see the same game without any additional supports. We just had to change the type of fence that was there. So we're always thinking about access, and how do our children have access to what we're doing? And if all of them have access, then what do we need to change to give some additional supports along the way when students need it? So let's do another Slido. When you hear the term inclusion, are you motivated to try something new? Are you willing to collaborate with your colleagues? And are you willing to ask questions? Or maybe all of the above? All right, well, Lithuania is in great hands with all of you being willing to to do the hard things to make a difference for all students. So you can continue to complete that if you'd wish. And now I want you to ask questions. No question is a bad question. Are there questions in the room? And we'll have a microphone that's coming around, or I believe online people can also ask some questions. So what questions do you have about anything? About the students I talked about the push in, pull out, differentiation? What would you like to ask?
Hi, Katie. My name is Monica. I'm the radio host of educational leadership topic, and I'm not deeply into inclusion, but I've got a question. Thank you, first of all, for making me cry. Actually, almost all the presentation. it was hard. Yes, but the question is about you. You've said that inclusion is not for everyone, or is not the answer to all the questions. But when are the situations when you cannot, when you actually must pull out the person out of, regular education system? Are there situations like that? And thank you for those great examples that are truly inspiring.
You're welcome. Thank you. There are situations when inclusion does not work for students. We are always considering it, but some of our students, and I'll talk specifically about my state of Minnesota, some of our students cannot make it in a general school. It might be because they are simply too aggressive and their behaviors are so severe that it isn't safe for them or their peers. And so we have to consider a different setting, and we call it a setting 4 placement. It's a special school that is only for students with similar needs. Those students are getting intense support. They will have a smaller classroom with probably about 6 to 8 students, a teacher, and 2 or 3 assistants, depending on the severity of their needs. They will also get a lot of different therapies at that school. So your regional centers are equipped to provide occupational therapy, physical therapy, and in our general education schools, we have occupational therapists, physical therapists that come into the school, but they're not equipped with the same level of intensity that this special school will have. So they have that, they might have dog therapy, they might have art therapy, music therapy, but we're always trying to think about how can we get them back to the general education school, because we know when they're 21 years old, they're going to be in the community. And so the sooner we can get them into that general education school where they will continue to receive supports, we will do that. We also, in our general education schools, we have something called Setting 3, which is a self-contained classroom, which means students are out of the general education classroom 75 to 100% of the day. Again, we try to get them with their general education peers as much as possible, but those students may have medical needs, they may have toileting needs, they may have a feeding tube where we have the school nurse providing some supports. Those students have a lot of extra support, but that is still provided in the general school. So it's a separate classroom, and there's a lot of supports, one teacher, and then different assistants helping with different things. Does that answer your question? Okay. And I'm not sure how the translation is working if you want to ask your question in Lithuanian. But please ask in Lithuanian. Somebody will, maybe Matas will translate for me. Somebody will translate for me. No question is a bad question.
I have a question. So you've spent a couple of weeks here already, and you've visited before. So my question would be, what kind of reflections do you have about the situation now in Lithuanian schools and regional centers, and in the general education community? And also, maybe something surprised you. So did you have any surprises?
I will start with the surprises, and it was a wonderful surprise to know all of the amazing techniques that the special education professionals are using in this country. They are using the best of the best, and some that I had never even heard of. One that came out of the UK, attention autism. I had never heard of that, and I had the opportunity to observe that, and I'm still learning about it. I've already told my colleagues back home, we have to check this out. Is this something we should look into? But I just was so encouraged on how advanced the professionals are working with kids with disabilities. I had no reason, I didn't know what it would be like. And so that was an encouragement because they know how to work with kids with disabilities. They know the evidence-based practices that will work. And so now they need to be able to be received from that general education school. I have not spent time in more than one school, and so I hope to do more of that when I come in the fall, to be able to interact with the general education teachers. But when I was here a year ago, my husband and I were in Klaipėda for 3 months, and I was working with LCC International University on a different Fulbright award to help them use universal design for learning in the university classroom and to build some disability policies for students with learning disabilities, emotional needs, and ADHD in the university setting. So during that time, I interacted with a lot of Lithuanians who are parents of general kids going to school, and they expressed a lot of anger about inclusion. And they didn't want their son or daughter to go to school with kids with disabilities. And I listened because it wasn't my place to speak up at that moment. And I wanted to understand the culture a little bit more. But that was a real feeling that they were having. And one of them was going to have a petition to make sure kids with disabilities would not be in her daughter's classroom. And that was horrifying for me, as it might be for many of you. And so we need to communicate. We need to provide some disability awareness. And I have the opportunity tomorrow to work with a media company connected to the National Education Agency. I'm looking up there if I'm saying it correctly, to give some suggestions on how we get the message out to the broader community about why inclusion is so important. And if we don't have any understanding, if we've never had an opportunity to interact with people who are different than us, then we're not going to know, and we might respond with anger or frustration. Let's see. I don't know if I've answered everything you asked. I think as things are set up differently in Lithuania. Of course, you're a completely different country. You are a small country. And having these regional centers that have typically been special schools up to this point, and they still are special schools for some students. But it's a really smart way to use what you already have in order to be providing services as we step into inclusion. So the experts, Sandra, Inga, those at the National Inclusion Center, and the Ministry of Education really are thinking about what does it look like, what are best practices in Lithuania as we phase into this, because it can't be perfect from the beginning. So how do we use the resources we have, the experts that we already have, to further inclusion in the most positive way possible? I really do want general education teachers to begin to have opportunities to learn beyond things like this, that I hope every school or municipality would provide opportunities for every teacher to learn, and not only those who are willing and excited to be here, as most of you are. So I see a lot of hope, and I still have a lot of questions, and I hope that my husband and I get to come back many times. So.
Okay, so we have one online question. I will translate it from Elena Shemetiene. The question is, how does a special pedagogue work? Does he or she bring the students to a special room for students with special needs? or do they work in the classroom, or just only consult the teacher? What is the model?
It would be a little bit of all three. So we have something called co-teaching, and when I come in the fall, I will be doing a little bit more related to co-teaching, and that is where we have the general education teacher and the special education teacher teaching together. So if I am the principal in that school, I'm going to be a little more intentional to maybe have 5 students with disabilities in that classroom because I'm going to bring in another teacher. And not all day, but for those intense subjects of reading, writing, and math. There is the pullout to, I maybe was using the word resource classroom, and what that means is it's a special classroom where the special education teacher is. And it might be a special classroom for reading and academics. It might be a special classroom for behavior support. It might be a special classroom for social skills or communication skills. Whatever the needs are, we would bring a group of students who have similar needs to that special classroom, maybe for 30 minutes at a time, and more severe needs, it would be longer. And then also consultation. Consultation is going to be related to ideas for differentiation, which I know you're going to hear about. Ideas for when the classroom teacher doesn't know what to do, that they have somebody that they can come to. It may be if I am the teacher for students with emotional and behavioral disorders, it may be that I am the first line of contact if there is a behavior issue that the general education teacher can't resolve. So they'd be able to call me, I would go and I would either support my student right there, or I would take my student with me and guide them through their moments of anger or frustration. So great question, all 3 of those.
Hello, I also have a question. Thank you so much for the presentation and this beautiful interaction with Matas that you had. And then all of these examples and now nice answers. Most of the presentation was focused on the practicalities, what is happening in the classroom. But today here we also have school principals and maybe people from the municipalities, so people that work mostly with the leadership of education, right? So my question is, what kind of leadership do we need to better implement, to be able to successfully implement the examples that you showed and to successfully implement UDL in schools. So if you can mention something about it. Thank you.
Yes, I'm so glad that you are here, and I hope I will have an opportunity to meet with a larger group of principals and leaders in the municipalities when I come back in the fall. But for right now, I would say I have observed that a school leader who models collaboration is probably number 1. And that if that school leader is able to model for their general education teachers and the special pedagogues what that looks like from the upper level of the school, that's going to be really important. I also believe a school leader and the municipalities need to provide many, many opportunities for their teachers to not be afraid of what this looks like when kids with disabilities come into their classrooms. The more we can communicate, the better. And if I am a teacher, when I was here a year ago, I was helping at a speech contest, and I was talking with some secondary teachers, and they had no idea what my background was. My role that day was I was a judge of English-speaking speeches. And they expressed that they didn't know anything, but they were being told kids with disabilities would be in their classrooms. So of course, and usually we don't want to show that we're afraid, so we're going to respond with frustration or anger. And so again, that was only one example. But if we're not communicating, that will be difficult. So I'd say communication and collaboration are the 2 biggest, most important pieces needed. Yes, the techniques, that will take time, but we must collaborate and communicate before we can even implement those techniques with any level of fidelity. So I'm thrilled that you're here. I'm so glad that you're here, and I hope you, municipality leaders and school leaders, I hope you were able to take some things from what I shared practically and think with your hat on as a leader, what does that look like for you as you support your amazing educators?
Hai, sveiki Keitė. Labai ačiū. Aš esu iš darželio ir noriu paklausti, ar jūs turite patirties iki mokyklinio ugdymo sferoje, kaip vyksta Minnesotoje UDM darželiuose ir ar čia planuojate kažkiek savo veiklą plėsti iki mokyklinio ugdymo įstaigose?
Hi, I'll translate.
Oh, thank you.
The question was about education up to primary school, so mainly kindergartners. The question was about whether you have experience with implementing UDL into kindergartens, and then what about your experience in the USA regarding implementing UDL in kindergartens, and have you had any experience in Lithuania with kindergartens in Lithuania?
I'll start with the first part. So I do not have a background in early childhood special education in America, but I work with people who work in early childhood. And so early childhood special education can start as early as birth. So if a baby is born with Down syndrome, they will have a teacher, an early childhood special education teacher that comes to their home several days a week, and they will work with the parents to know how to, work on the child's muscles, to work on what happens with our tongues, feeding, all of those things, excuse me. And then at age 3, that child will go to what you would call a kindergarten center, and it will be with general education peers, and they will receive support right in that classroom. So at the early childhood age, inclusion is always happening, again, unless there is a severe behavior that is harming other children or themselves. That early childhood special education teacher receives a different training than the special education teachers that are in what we call kindergarten to 12th grade, so age 5 or 6 to 18. I have been in some kindergartens just yesterday and the day before, but it was a very small group. It was one-on-one with the occupational therapist, physical therapist, and then in an autism social skills class. So I have not been in a traditional kindergarten here in Lithuania, but I hope to visit one soon. So I can't respond to that part. All right, well, thank you so much for having me today. It's been a pleasure to be with you, and I hope to see you again someday in the future.
Thank you, Katie.